forward on this. So good morning, everyone. My name is Giselle Rodriguez Greenwood. I am the president of the Houston chapter for the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. I'm also the editor-in-chief of the Houston Business Journal, Houston's only publication that strictly focuses on business news. So I'm very happy to have you all with us today. If I can ask you guys to all mute your mics, please, while we do the chat with Ron. I super appreciate it. If you're not familiar with NAHJ, welcome. We're happy to have you with us today. We're an organization that supports and aims to help Latino journalists succeed in their careers at any point in their careers. And we're pleased to kick off what we hope is a series of informative events. We will be hosting an event next month on how to keep your skills sharp and how to market yourself during a pandemic. We'll be speaking to a career expert who will give you helpful tips on how to just stay on top of your career, whether you're looking to change careers, climb the ladder where you're at, or if you're a college grad, how to get a job. So that panel is scheduled for November 7th at 11:30 a.m. via Zoom. So check our Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, all that for details on that event. So at this time, I would like to introduce our Vice President, Mariana Pineda. Mariana.
Muchísimas gracias, Giselle. Hola, bienvenidos, mucho gusto. Mi nombre es Mariana Pineda, soy originaria de la Ciudad de México y como bien lo dijo Giselle, soy la vicepresidente del capítulo local. Si usted no está familiarizado con NASH, nuestra organización es la que impulsa a posicionar más latinos e hispanos en los noticieros. Así que nos encanta que nos acompañen este sábado. Feliz mes de la hispanidad, abarca del 15 de septiembre al 15 de octubre, así que tenemos 5 días más para celebrarlo. Por supuesto que nos acompaña este histrión del periodismo aquí en Houston, Ron Trevino, a quien agradecemos su presencia. Y nos encantaría que nos acompañe el próximo 7 de noviembre en punto de las 11:30 de la mañana, ya que contaremos con una experta en la materia de cómo lograr que usted consiga ese anhelado trabajo en los medios de comunicación. Así que nos encanta tenerlos. Muy buenos días en este sábado y feliz día de mes de la hispanidad.
Absolutely. Gracias, Mariana. Okay, and at this time, I'd like to introduce Ruthie Munoz. She is in charge of memberships and recruiting. Ruthie, would you like to speak first, or would you like me to play our video? Oh, you're on mute.
Oops. Good morning. Go ahead and play the video first, and then I'll talk afterwards.
Okay, let's see if I can make this work.
Ah!
Sorry, guys. I'm a print reporter, not a video one. Okay. All right. And here we go. Oops.
Oh, where's the sound?
Mm-hmm. Can you guys hear the sound? I'm so sorry.
No.
Okay.
But at least we got captions.
All right. Well, hold on. Okay. Whoops. Geez, you guys, I'm so sorry. Ruthie, let's just go ahead and get into our membership program.
Okay. My pleasure. All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about NAHJ and what NAHJ means to me. So my name is Ruthie Munoz. I'm originally from the Bronx, New York. My parents are from the Dominican Republic, and I am a Houston transplant where I came in contact with NAHJ when I went back to school. And what NAHJ means to me is really immeasurable and without words. So I encourage students, and I think that we have some students on here today, and everyone, if you're not a part of our organization, to join us. So some of the things that you'll get as a member of NAHJ is a plethora of virtual and in-person learning, especially right now during the pandemic. You can have discounted registration rates to the NAHJ convention. You can have a quick and easy renewal, especially right now for journalists that are Art of Work. We offer a 6-month membership extension. You have access to our resume database that's sent out to all of the recruiters nationwide. And for students in particular, we have student boot camps. Sorry, that's my granddaughter. We have student boot camps, and all of our training is, especially the ones that we have in person, they're small and intimate. So this is a great way to network and to meet mentors in journalism. The price is unbeatable. Seriously, guys, if I just have no words, it's $35 for a year. For the academic, the associate, and a regular membership. For students, it's $25. And if you want to become a lifelong member, it's either $125 a month or $1,500 off the bat, but then that's it. So if you have any questions, I'll be available at the end of the conference if you have any questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruthie. All right, folks, at this time, we'll go ahead and start our Q&A with Ron Trevino. Here's how it will work. I'll do a Q&A with Ron, and then towards the last 10 to 15 minutes, we will open up the panel to questions for Ron. So once again, please mute your microphone so that we can hear his words of wisdom. And thank you, Ron, for joining us today. I am very happy that you could be with us and take time out of your busy schedule to be here. So folks, for you, just a little background on Ron. He's been with KHOU for 38 years, and he anchors the 4 p.m. newscasts 3 days a week, as well as the weekend newscasts. In 2015, he was awarded the Houston Hispanic Media Professionals Lifetime Achievement Award. He's also a recipient of the Dallas Press Club's Katie Award for Best Major Market Newscast. And he's also winner of the United Press International's National Broadcast Award for Spot News. Ron started his career while still in high school in Corpus Christi and continued to hone his craft while attending Del Mar College. He continued his education at the University of Houston and joined KHOU in 1982 as a producer. Ron, welcome.
It was great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about growing up in Corpus Christi. What was that like?
Well, actually, it was fun because it was the 1960s. What do we have in the 1960s? We had James Bond, we had Batman, we had the Beatles, we had the Supremes, we had Motown, and all the conjunto music that my parents were listening to. But we grew up without any money. I lived in government housing in Corpus most of my childhood. I think there's an effort right now in Corpus Christi to have those housing projects torn down because they're like not meant for families. But you know, honestly, it was a fun childhood. These were like army barracks that were built for military personnel at the Naval Air Station there in Corpus, I think during World War II or shortly thereafter. So like, you know, military men and maybe, you know, their small little families like their wife and maybe their baby could live there for a short time. but I was one of 8 kids, Catholic family down in Corpus, in this 3-bedroom apartment with 1 bathroom. I mean, the boys, we had bunk beds in one room. My 2 sisters had a big bed in their bedroom, and my parents had their own bedroom. But it was fun, but we didn't have much, you know. I feel for my parents because this is why Christmas is always tough for me, because I knew my mom and dad would work their butts off to get us gifts, and we had gifts every Christmas. But it was food stamps, you know, and then my dad, part of his problem was he had health issues. He had diabetes, childhood diabetes, and that's a curse on our people, you know. But he had juvenile diabetes, so it made it hard for him to work, and because he had diabetes attacks like everything in your body, all your organs, your eyesight, your heart. He had multiple bypass surgeries, circulation. He had to have a leg amputated at one point in his life. But he would like make deals with like the meat market owner, you know, and barter stuff, and he'd come home with, you know, frozen meat, and he'd like, hey, whatever. But it was fun. Corpus was fun, despite the fact that we didn't have any money. And Corpus is, and that's where I got my first TV job, as a matter of fact.
Right. Well, and how did those experiences shape who you are as a journalist today?
Well, I mean, I empathy for one, you know. As a journalist, you know, it's a cliche, but you're supposed to stand up for the small guy, you know. You're not supposed to take sides generally, but mostly it's the small guy who gets trampled on in America. And so it gave me empathy for that. It also shapes how I view my work ethic, you know. In America, especially now, the line between success and or stability in your life and living on the streets is extremely tenuous. It's very thin. I don't care who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You lose your job like that, you lose your livelihood like that. So it's made me appreciate everything. As far as I'm concerned, everything in my life is like a cherry on top. It's like everything from here on out is gravy compared to the previous generation, my dad and his health problems, my brothers who went to Vietnam. They took the bullet for me because I was too young to go. I kind of feel like, you know, I'm the beneficiary of that. I just, you know, they took the bullet for me, you know.
So who do you think was the biggest influence in your life, both personally and in your career?
Well, I mean, it's always your parents. You know, my mom was a saint. She was pure love, you know, like everybody's mom, you know, like a Catholic mom or like a Jewish mom or whatever, right?
Right.
They're all the same thing. Nothing but love. I mean, nothing but support that I got from them. My dad gave me probably my sense of humor. He would laugh at everything. He had like a huge laugh. But I mean, no matter who you are, you need to have somebody in your corner. You need to have a champion in your corner, or your career is going to be very difficult. If you're in a work environment where you don't have somebody who's got your back and supporting you, a fan of yours that can help you succeed, it's going to be tougher. And I've had many people here at KHOU and even down in Corpus when I was a kid who were like, hey, let's give this kid a chance. Let's send him here. Let's give him this assignment. So there was a guy here at KHOU named Bob Schaefer. He just recently died, but he was an assistant news director here for years. And he took a liking. He was a white guy from Louisiana. Bob Schaefer, he joked about, you know, his Nazi name. You know, he had a sense of humor about ethnicities, but he always cared about minorities in this newsroom. He hired a girl who's Muslim, and she told me that she applied for the job as a producer, and Bob asked her, hey, why do you want this job? And she said, well, I just want to change the way America views Muslims. And he goes, you're hired. You know? So guys like that are good to have in your corner. But I hate to say it, man, it's got to be you. You got to work your butt off, and you're gonna take a lot of slings and arrows in this business because it's a fun business. I mean, it's great to serve the public and uncover things that they didn't know. And, you know, especially now during the pandemic, everything we do is like information that could save your life or could make your life easier. So that's why, you know, you do it, but it's still a fun business. But like a lot of fun businesses, it can be treacherous, you know, especially economically right now. You know, some people are laying people off because of pandemic, not just journalism. You know, I think you just have to be tough and don't give up, you know.
And how, I mean, as a young reporter, it can be hard to build that resiliency. So what advice do you have for young reporters on building that thick skin? How do you go about doing that?
You can't take it personally. It's, you know, it's a business. And the problem is a lot of people in TV, probably in print too, we have huge egos. We won't admit it, but we have huge egos, me included. But believe me, my ego has decayed as the years and the slings and arrows keep coming my way. But you got to check your ego at the door and like, it's a business. Don't take it personally. And the tendency is to take everything personally.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to stick it out. You know, I look at a career like this, right? It's not always going to be like that. It'll be like that, and believe me, it's going to go like that. It will happen. But then if you don't give up, it'll go back up again. You know, that's been my experience with me. You know, but I candidly, I don't have any other skills, so I don't think I have any other choice. I stick with news.
Right. Was there ever a time that you made a mistake in your career, and how did you rectify it?
Oh yeah, I've always made mistakes in my career. I've never gotten sued. I've never, I mean, I've always been very aware of the fact that one word could get you sued, or one word could get that person you're doing the story on fired, or worse, you know, could affect their family. Mm-hmm. I was always scared about that. So it made me do everything. I tried to make my pieces bulletproof, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Bulletproof to where they're fair and you can't get sued for them because you didn't say anything that was erroneous or whatever. There have been times on the air when I've said something stupid, but we've made fun with it.
And it's got to be so hard, especially for broadcast, because you speak off the cuff. And
I was doing the morning show with Deborah Duncan, and the script. And back then, so this is probably about 10 years ago or something, we had a huge crew in the studio. Now we just have robots and maybe a floor director. Back then we had like 5 or 6 people in the studio manning these cameras, and the floor director, and you know, the traffic guy and the weather guy, and we're all there. And my script talked about a student that headbutted a teacher. I said butt-headed instead of headbutt. and then, you know, the guy behind the camera starts laughing. I'm like, what? And then Deborah starts laughing, and then, you know, so stuff like that. You just kind of play with it. And then one day was a different crew, and we took like a bump shot from the water wall, I think, or it might have been the Beacon Fountain. Mm-hmm. But it was hot summer. I'm like, hey man, would you like to take a dump in that? I wanted to say dip. And everybody starts laughing, and we hadn't gone to the commercial yet. And everybody starts laughing like, what? Oh, and then we went to the commercial. And then we get emails, but people laugh it off. I've never said a cuss word on the air, and I never will.
Well, that's good. That's why I'm not a broadcast reporter. But okay, so I'm sure you've covered quite a few political runs. We are speaking of heated words. We're obviously in a very contentious political race right now with the presidential race. What would you say is different about this one than previous presidential debates and runs that we've had before?
Well, it's the craziest one, but I think, you know, the station's really divided. You have to be very careful about what you tweet.
Mm-hmm.
Goes back to what I said about being bulletproof. You have to be aware that there's a lot of people who support the president and a lot of people who don't. So be very careful. That's all I got to say. I tweeted about the debate the other night, not the most recent one, the vice presidential debate, but I tweeted about the presidential debate. And again, I didn't take sides, but I was more asking people what their thoughts about the debate were, and occasionally making a couple of, you know, obvious comments that the whole world would have made, which is like, this is the worst debate ever. But did I pick a side? No.
Okay. Yeah, and as journalists, you know, obviously we're supposed to remain unbiased, but it's really, really hard to see that bias as a reporter. Do you have any advice for young reporters on how to toe the line to stay neutral?
Well, I think you have to make everything bulletproof. Everything you post has to be bulletproof. Facebook, Twitter, unless you want to set up an anonymous account where nobody knows who you are, and then you can say whatever you want. But no, even my Instagram posts, I don't get political at all. I try to be humorous in my Instagram pieces, my posts, you know. But I mean, unless you are actually working for an outlet that wants you to make an editorial push in your piece, then be very aware that everything you say is going to be something somebody's going to hit you for.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't mean you can't do your job. It doesn't mean you can't do your job.
Yeah.
It's just because I think what we found to be normal, even maybe 4 years ago, is not normal now. So.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think? I mean, that's a good point. How do you think journalism has changed from 10, 15 years ago?
Well, it's still the basic. It's still the basic thing. It's still the basic model. I mean, the fundamentals are still the same. You still have to be fair to people. You still have to uncover stories or things that are misunderstood. I like stories that reveal something about a subject that's misunderstood, and you clear it up. Good stories are still good stories. They were good now. They were good back then. A story is a story. But obviously now you have a lot more to worry about. You have to, you know, shoot the story, then you have to post about it. So I guess everybody nowadays has to be very well versed and skilled at posting stuff, you know, and that to me is kind of tedious work, you know, because after you've done your story, and back in the old days, you shot your story and you were done. You know? But now it's like you're never done, you know. And I feel for people doing story, you know. And I've been shooting stories during this pandemic too, and it's like you feel like your job's never done. But that comes with the territory with being a reporter. I mean, you know, when I was working from my house, turning stories daily, I put a lot of hours on my laptop. You know, I wanted to just go watch Netflix, but I had to search the internet, go to some of my favorite news outlets and magazines, and try to put some stories together for the next day, some story ideas. I don't know. You just gotta have to work hard, man. Mm-hmm. You know? I mean, my advice to people back in the old days was get a pair of comfortable shoes. You know, if you're a reporter, get nice clothes, but get comfortable shoes. You know, I wish I'd have had more comfortable shoes back then, because now my feet kill me. But maybe that's because I'm old. I don't know.
Well, and it's interesting, as journalists, we're kind of like a one-man band too. You know, it's no longer, and our mediums have changed. It's no longer.
Yeah, but it started out as a one-man band. Yeah. Down in Corpus, I was a one-man band. But the benefit now is the gear is a little bit lighter than it was back in 1977.
Yeah.
I mean,
all you need is an iPhone, right?
Well, theoretically, yes, that could help. Yeah. But I mean, back then, I mean, I probably weighed 90 pounds in 1977. I probably weighed 90 pounds, and I was in high school, And this might have been when I was in college. I had 3 jobs. I worked at KHOU, which is now a Tegna station. I worked there on the weekends. I worked at a convenience store during the week. And also, like on Saturday mornings, I sold stereos at some place that sold stereos and sewing machines. It was like one business. That's all they sold, was stereos and sewing machines. It's the weirdest thing. So I had 3 jobs, and I was a one-man band, dude. I mean, and back then we had the light, just attached to the camera, and the camera probably weighed 30 pounds. And then you had a battery belt it was like a Batman battery belt that you wore around your waist. It was crazy. I shot all the fires and car accidents overnight in Corpus Christi. That'll be in the book.
So aside from having to do it all as a journalist, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing journalists today?
Well, I think one is money.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of journalism jobs might be paying less now in the pandemic. Money's going to be a problem. I think the fact that we'll see what happens after this political season. That's a challenge in itself. But I think that the pandemic is one big challenge. Will you still have your job? Television stations, newspapers, we all rely on advertising. If there's fewer companies advertising, then that affects the bottom line too. So there's some economic realities that face all Americans, including journalists. But my advice to journalists is you gotta keep fighting every day, man. And don't take it personally. You gotta be like a running back, just like it's a grind sometimes, and sometimes you're not gonna get the stories that you want to cover. But it's still, at the end of the day, it's still a great job. You just grind it out, man. And another thing I noticed through years, and maybe I'm getting off track here, but another thing I noticed through the years in working through many newsrooms and many configurations of this newsroom is there's a lot of whining. I love to whine too. Mm-hmm. And not just when I was in the news business, when I was doing other things for a living too. It's better not to whine. It's just do your job. Whining takes energy. Fighting every assignment takes energy. Mm-hmm. And it's not worth it, man. It's gonna hurt the spirit, first of all.
That's true. Leave it for at home. Whine to your pets or your plants. Yeah. But that's a good point, because especially now in this pandemic, and there's obviously been a lot written about mental health and basically just how do you not lose yourself when things are just so off kilter and off the norm. And work-life balance is already kind of non-existent for journalists, but do you have any advice as far as like how to just keep yourself mentally grounded?
Well, I do a lot of stuff. First of all, I'm married. Not that I'm suggesting anybody get married. Don't take that advice from me. But obviously your family keeps you grounded, You have a wife and child, or a spouse and a child at home, or a family, that's going to keep you grounded whether you want to be grounded or not. But there's things that I've taken up during the pandemic. I've taken guitar lessons, and I'm not very good at guitar. But sometimes I just get on the couch and I just make noise, and it's extremely relaxing. I do exercise. I go bike riding. I try to play tennis, even if it's the ball machine. The great thing about journalism is, at the end of the day, after you've done all those things, after you've done the story ideas, and after you've turned in your web script and all your stories have been filed, I always turn it off. I would turn it off. I would think about something else. I think that's probably what's helped me through this industry is I don't obsess about news. Mm-hmm. I think about, there's other things I'm interested in. Because it's not the only, now some people, that's all they care about is news, and more power to them,
Right.
But I'd rather discuss rock and roll history with somebody, or World War I history with someone, or, you know, books. You know, I love to read. This is another thing I recommend to journalists, and it sounds like I'm a Sunday school teacher, or, you know, but you need to read.
Yeah.
Reading helps your writing. And magazines, I love to read the New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people have different opinions about the New York Times, but those writers on the New York Times, very good. Very
yeah,
good.
I agree 100%. It makes you a stronger writer.
You may not
reporter.
like their coverage, but that is good reporting in the New York Times. I love to read Stephen King books. Mm-hmm. Why? Because I like the way he turns a phrase, the way he constructs a sentence. I'm like, that's genius. Or, you know, I have books on my on my bedstand that irritate my wife. I have them in the bathroom. If we move, she's like, "You gonna get rid of those books?" I'm like, "No."
Right.
You know, because I got bookshelves of books. Mm-hmm. Some that I haven't read yet, but I know I'm gonna read them someday. You know.
Yeah. No, but I agree 100%, because it also helps you tell a story, and that's ultimately what we're doing, is telling a story. Of somebody's life, of things that are happening, you know, just to make it interesting and dynamic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm like, you know, sometimes I'll use lines. Yeah. You know, I'll just, like, I was reading John Connolly, I think, is a popular thriller writer, and he started out the book saying it was the dark before the dawn, or something like that. God, it's a great line, the dark before the dawn. So we were on the morning show at 5 a.m. and we had a beauty shot of, like, downtown. And I'm like, downtown Houston, the dark before the dawn. Little plagiarism.
So did I hear you're actually working on a book?
No, I was joking about that. But okay. I'll tell you what, I should write a book.
You should.
I should write a book. I'll tell you why. I mean, because everything has happened to my family and me that has happened to America. We were like a microcosm of the 70s and in the 60s. You know, my brothers went off to war, to Vietnam. You know, I had a brother who was murdered in Corpus. I had a brother who died of AIDS in Corpus. He was gay. He died of AIDS. Mm-hmm. If he were alive today, he would have survived, because he had HIV for a very long time. They didn't have drugs back then.
Right.
He died of AIDS. I had another brother who died, who was a Vietnam vet. I blame it on Vietnam, because he came back with PTSD. Both my brothers came back from Vietnam with PTSD. So he self-medicated with drugs and alcohol, and he ended up dying in the hospital. Mm. But yeah, I mean, these are all things I could write about. And of course, all my news adventures.
What is let's talk about a little bit about your news adventures. What's the most memorable one in your career?
I don't know. I mean, you cover so many. I mean, I've had some really sad ones that have made us all cry. Mm-hmm. I remember one day we were covering celebratory gunfire. It might have been after 4th of July, or might have been after New Year's Day. But, you know, people shoot their guns off at midnight. Mm-hmm. And then the next day, you know, a girl was killed. A little girl was killed accidentally by her father. Mm. So we all went out to the neighborhood, and, you know, we had all the news trucks lined out there, getting, you know, shots of the crime scene. And then the dad walks out. And so we're like, oh my God, here's the dad. So he, like, waves at all of us. So we all grab our cameras and we go up to him, and right in front of his yard. And he tells us what happened, you know. He says, you know, it was midnight, and my daughter, she was laying on the couch. And she was on the couch, and I got the gun up, you know, and I tried to shoot it, and it was jammed, and I tried to unjam it, and the next thing you know, it goes off. And it hits her right in the chest. And she looked up at me, and she said, "It's okay, Dad." And she fell over, and we're like, oh my God. We were just, all of us, I looked around, we were all just sobbing. We couldn't believe what this man was. I mean, it still makes me sad. Yeah. Imagine a father telling you what happened, and a little girl saying, "It's okay, Dad," and then and she falls over. I'm never going to forget that one.
Wow.
But every one of us, we were all just like, we're holding the mic, but we're like, that was sad. I had a lot of fun stories. I love to do fun stories. The one where I worked my butt off the most was probably 2 hours of sleep every night for like about 3 weeks, is when they sent me to Rome for the papal conclave for Pope Francis when he was elected. I didn't want to go. I had tickets to go see Eric Clapton that week. I didn't want to go. I was anchoring the morning show. And the news director was like, hey, I want to send you to Rome. I'm like, okay. You're a Catholic. You've covered stories in Rome for KHOU before. You know the setup. It'd be great. I'm like, okay. So me and a photographer went, and we did live shots morning, noon, and night.
Wow.
And we got about 2 hours of sleep every night.
And what'd you do with those Eric Clapton tickets?
I think I sold them to somebody.
But they didn't go to waste, is what you're basically.
Or I might have eaten those tickets. I still have them.
Oh man. Oh wow.
I still have them. But anyway, I think I sold them. I can't remember. But yeah, it was just, but it was a fun time. I mean, there was no sleep, but it was fun. And we were on it, and I felt like, sometimes when you're a journalist, you're like a pitcher. You're like a major league pitcher. You never know when you're going to have the sauce. Sometimes, and I think a lot of it, I think you're like an athlete. You have to know your stuff, but you have to be loose. You can't be tight. And I think I knew my stuff and I was loose. Maybe it's because of lack of sleep, but then I got into a rhythm, and it was just, when they send you out of the country, you tend to tighten up. I'm like, oh my God, and everything's live, and oh my God, I'm live from Rome. I can't mess up. But I think I was just loose, and I think I did some of my best work.
Yeah.
On 2 hours of sleep for 3 weeks.
Yeah. And you famously interviewed Selena one time, didn't you?
Yeah, people here at work give me grief about it because I love to post that picture. Yeah, Selena. Yeah, I mean, it was back then. We had a Saturday morning. We had a Sunday morning show called Steve Smith Sunday, because we used to have an anchorman named Steve Smith, legendary guy here. And so it was kind of a, hey, go out and shoot a 6-minute story on whatever, And it had kind of a community affairs aspect to it, a cultural aspect to it, things that wouldn't make it on the news, but are kind of culturally interesting, artistic or whatever, feature-like. So, somebody said, hey, you should go down and do a story on Selena down in Corpus. I'm like, yeah, I'm from Corpus, So I contacted her dad, and Abe Quintanilla is like what you might think he is, very controlled, maybe very controlling. What are you coming down here for? What are you going to do? Oh, okay. All right. So we flew down to Corpus. Me and Nathan still works here at KHOU. He's one of my best friends. We flew down to Corpus. We were there all day. We were with her sister, her brother. We went into her house. I mean, at the point we're like, you guys are still here? We were there all day. I mean, we were putting a long story together. Yeah. So, we got her in the studio, and, she was explaining how she was going to get her clothing line together. We interviewed her dad and her brother, A.B. Quintanilla. And she even sang a song that, hey, this is going to be on my next album. She even did a few lines of that song for us. And so it was like a 6-minute story, And, she talked about Houston, coming to the rodeo, and how she loved it and everything. And then the next year I was out shooting a story, and they're like, hey, Ron, come back to the station. Selena's been shot. I'm like, what? And then they couldn't get us on a plane, so then we took the Air 11. We took our chopper, and we flew down to Corpus. We weren't supposed to use our chopper for transportation, but we used it that day. And I think it was kind of rainy, too. But we got there, and we were there for several days.
Wow.
And the funeral was strange. There was a public viewing at the Bayfront Auditorium. I think it's since been renamed Selena Auditorium. And all these Selena fans were coming in from all over the place. Were lining up to see the casket. And the casket was closed.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming out. And there were a few crazy people like, Selena's not dead. Why is that casket not open? We're not stupid. Selena's not dead. You know, the family found out about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting ready for our 10 o'clock live shot. Somebody banging on our satellite truck door. Hey, it was one of the other photographers from one of the other stations. Selena's family wants us to go take video of her open casket.
Oh my gosh.
It was like 15 minutes before airtime. So we all go in there with our cameras, open caskets, Selena, you know. That was weird.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And of course, then the trial and everything else.
Yeah. What was she like as a person? Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
she was, well, I mean, I only spent one day with her, but she was nice. She was very laid back, you know. Her family, I mean, they were like, hey, I can't believe, you know, Houston TV station's coming down to cover us because we can't get any coverage here in Corpus, you know. That would change.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so yesterday we ran a piece with the head writer and the creator of the Netflix series on Selena.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So, obviously, we're in almost at the tail end of the Hispanic Heritage Month, and just given your experience, you know, like with Selena and maybe some other Latino celebrities, how do you think being Hispanic has affected you in your career?
Well, I think it hurts and it helps, you know. I think some people might view me as, well, the only reason I have my job is because I'm Hispanic. Some people might think that.
Mm-hmm.
But I know they're wrong. But it does point out the fact that because we live in a society where it's not totally unracist, racism still exists in America. It just means that everybody of color needs to work that much harder. I mean, as if the job wasn't hard enough, you have to work harder.
Yeah.
You have to make sure you're the best at what you are, you know, the best writer, the best shooter, the best, you know, I don't know what it means to be the best anchor because there's so many things, you know. I mean, I never felt I was the best looking guy in the room or the sharpest dressed guy in the room. Well, sometimes I tried to, I mean, that's one thing you control. You can control how well you dress. You can't control the face, but you can control how well you dress. But I never felt I was like the sharpest guy in the room mentally or the smoothest guy on TV. But I never gave up. I'm still not giving up. You know, I still want to do this for a while longer. You know, I'm not frail. It's not like I'm lifting heavy boxes every day.
Right.
But I think it means that you have to work harder. You have to work twice as hard.
And what do you think our duty is as Latino journalists?
Well, I think your duty is obviously to the community at large, white, black, Asian, and obviously to your own community too. But in your efforts to be fair to everybody, don't cut short your own community. You have access to parts of the community that other people wouldn't have. You know, maybe you know more about Hispanics than your fellow African American reporter or your fellow white reporter, or your fellow Asian reporter. So use that information. You know, don't shortchange your own community, and try to help others out. I mean, if you know you're extremely young, it's hard to help other people. I try to help other people out, not financially. Don't ask for a loan, please.
Yeah.
But you know, and I often tell people, I wish I had advice for you, but I don't have advice for you. I mean, the best advice is there is no advice. You know, some of this stuff you have to learn on your own because what worked for me may not work for you.
Right.
But I try to help people out, and a lot of times, helping people out just means being nice to people. You know, don't be a jerk. You know, I try not to be a jerk.
Yeah.
You know, because the news business is tough enough as it is. You know, don't make it tougher on people by being arrogant and over competitive. I mean, newsrooms are competitive. No, we're all competing with each other. But that doesn't mean you have to act like a competitor to your coworker. You don't.
Right.
At the end of the day, there's room for everybody.
Yeah. And my biggest thing too is just providing time. I say this a lot of times. I think the most valuable gift you can give anybody is your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes I just feel like inadequate because I don't think I'm a very good teacher, but people ask me for advice. Sometimes I give it,
Yeah.
If possible, a lot of it has to do with less about journalism and just more about career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, folks, if you have any questions, please submit them now for Ron. Put them in the chat and I will certainly address them. But, Ron, one thing, especially in our industry, what's a big thing is building trust as journalists. So how did you go about building trust with your audience?
Well, a lot of it is just years. Spending years in front of the audience is one thing. Also, I try to be less this might go back down to writing too. Just try to be, I hate to say it, try to be more real with people because that sounds corny as hell. But you just try to be more real with people, even, on the air, try to write in a way that's conversational. Try to talk to someone as if you're having a conversation with them. Try not to get into your mode, you know what I mean? You're in news talker mode, and it happens to me too. You can't be too casual, but I think if you can try to be more conversational with people and try to have more of a conversation with them rather than writing like a textbook. But a lot of this, candidly, just takes time.
Right. And I know a lot of young reporters, especially in print for us, to get our career started, internships are extremely important. Is there any way, like what advice would you give for young reporters to find those internships?
Well, I think we still do have internships here at KHOU. You just have to get in touch with, each station has somebody who's in charge of interns. You have to find out who that person is. And I think the person here might be Dale Lockett, but I'm not sure. But, there used to be a lot more interns than we had, and obviously now the pandemic, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any interns during a pandemic.
Right. And how do you feel about unpaid internships?
Well, I'm still not getting paid, so.
You got to love what you do, right?
Hey, man, it's a hobby. Well, I mean, I think if you're in college and you're getting some college credit for it and you're not, obviously they're not going to send an intern out on a hurricane, or are they?
Maybe.
I guess in a perfect world, I mean, students need money, but I think in the perfect world, it'd be great if they were paid, right? But since that's probably not going to happen anytime soon, especially during a pandemic, get what you can. You got to make a few sacrifices to get ahead, especially
right.
At the beginning, yeah, it's tough. I don't envy kids these days. I started when I was in high school, and I was getting paid. It was a part-time job.
Oh wow.
It was a photographer. I was a photographer.
Yeah, you got really lucky.
Well, it was the 70s, and it was Corpus.
Yeah.
I think I got. This will be another thing in the book. I almost got. I think I got hired accidentally.
What? How so?
Well, back then, the news director, this is Corpus Christi back in like 1977, the news director would have everybody at 5 o'clock go into his office. Hey, get yourself some beverage there. He had a little refrigerator there. And he'd be smoking a cigarette. You know, smoking was allowed back in the day.
Of course, yep.
And we'd all gather around and we'd pack his office and we'd watch the show. We'd watch the newscast. And, you know, he'd be back there smoking a cigarette going, that's a good story. And then one day he looked at me and goes, hey, Ron, I'm really sorry about your professor. I go, what are you talking about? Yeah, your professor at UT, he died the other day. I'm like going, I didn't go to UT. You didn't go to UT? I thought that was on your resume. I said, no, I didn't go to UT. He goes, damn, I hired the wrong guy.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Oh, that's funny.
Hired by accident.
Right. Well, for the record, I did go to UT, so hook 'em horns. They're playing right now.
Sorry about your professor. I don't even know who that was.
So, okay, we have some questions rolling in from Ashley Castillo. She says, hi, everyone. I'm a senior at Texas Southern University, and I'd like to know, what do you think is the best way to create an engaging news package using Zoom interviews like this?
Oh, she's asking me?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I don't know. Well, obviously, you would have to have an extra camera.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Zoom, you just got the double box and the full box, right? So
Right.
if you had like an extra camera behind you, mounted behind you, you can have like a different angle that you could go to every now and then, if you're afforded that opportunity to have an extra camera, you know, and then you put like maybe another, you know, a GoPro or something like that. That's one way to spice it up. But beyond that, I mean, a Zoom interview is a Zoom interview, but you can do those things.
Yeah. And I think it's also boils down to the subject matter, like who you're interviewing. Because if you have somebody boring on Zoom, it's going to show 20 times more.
That's true. It's true. I mean, it's just like in a regular in-person interview. If you have a boring expert, good luck with that. But sometimes, you know, you can, hey man, if you're good at what you do, you can spice it up somehow.
That's true. Very true. All right, another question for you. Some journalists feel they have to climb the ladder. What made you stay in Houston for so long?
Well, I'm from Texas, first of all, and I love Houston. Candidly, I love Houston. But yeah, you do have to climb the ladder. I mean, everybody's got to pay their dues. I mean, come on. I was a photographer in high school. And then when I was in college, high school, college, transitionally, you know, the assistant news director's like, hey, why don't you go out and shoot that story and write a story and you track it too. Come on, you can track it. I'm like, okay. So then I learned how to put packages together because I was shooting stories, you know. So I'd grab the interviews and I'd do that. And then he's like, man, we need somebody to produce a show this weekend. Hey, let me show you how to do that. So then he showed me how to produce a newscast. You know, and back then we didn't have laptops and we didn't have computers, your fancy computers. We didn't have those.
Yeah.
We had typewriters. In Corpus, we had manual typewriters, manual ones. Coming up to Houston was an upgrade because we had electric typewriters up here when I came up here in '82. But back then we had manual typewriters, and we had to write the show, you know, on a long, big cheap tablet, and time it out, you know, ourselves. So I learned how to do that. What's the question?
What made you stay in Houston for so long?
Oh, what makes me stay in Houston for so long? The electric typewriters? No. I love Houston, man. I love Houston.
What do you love about Houston so much?
Well, listen, let me tell you. Okay, so I grew up in Corpus at a time when Corpus's population was white or Hispanic, which is fine, but there was a certain, and I wouldn't say Corpus was a racist place, not like a backwater racist community, but racism exists sometimes on a, you know, cellular level to where it's very perceptible,
Right.
even though it's not outward, right? So there was always a sense, living in Corpus, it was us and them, you know, Hispanic versus white. And then I moved to Houston, it's like, nobody cared. Nobody cared what you were because we had Asians, we had people coming here from the Middle East, you know, we had a huge African-American population, we had Hispanics of different types here. And I'd go to places and people, oh, you're Hispanic, fine. What are you doing? And what's your job? And what are your goals in life? That's what people cared about here in Houston because it was such a work-oriented place. I found it I found it a breath of air, of fresh air. It was kind of liberating to come to Houston, you know?
Yeah, we really are kind of the melting pot of Texas.
It was just a breath of fresh air and liberating. I found it liberating.
And we also have great restaurants.
Yeah, and then, but now, I mean, this is, you know, my kids live here. All my friends live here, you know? I mean, I still like going back to Corpus, but I mean, this is my town. You know? Yeah. And part of the reason I like it is because people hate us.
True.
Their hate makes me love it more.
Exactly. Okay, here's another question for you from Daisy Espinosa. Her question is, how has journalism changed for you with the use of social media?
Well, it's made it more busy, but again, you got to be very careful. I try to make everything I post bulletproof, not to be offensive, not to pick on anyone, not to get political. You know, a lot of my KHOU Facebook posts are about the news. You know, hey, watch this story tonight, watch this story tonight. A lot of my Twitter's about the news, watch this story, watch that story. Occasionally during like a Texans game or an Astros game, I might get a little bit more fun with it, you know, like a sports fan.
Right.
But not mean, but fun. My Instagram's a little bit more humorous, you know, and a little bit more personal. But again, it's still has to be bulletproof.
Yeah.
So can't post anything that will get you, you know, in trouble. You know, can't be political, you know.
And even your personal account.
Or offensive in any way, you know.
Right. Yeah, and if you have a personal account, put it on lockdown, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a personal Facebook account, but I hardly ever post anything. It's just family stuff, you know.
Right. But yeah, I feel like social media now, the way journalists use it, it's really to kind of brand yourself. Like social media.
But you got to be very careful. Be very careful. Because sometimes you let your guard down. I've seen it happen to other people that let their guard down. Why did they post that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Be very careful.
And here's a follow-up question. Yes. Yeah. If
well, 2 or 3 times I'm like, there's some stuff that I thought was like, hey, that's a good post. And I'm like, but somebody might think it might be this. So do I really even need the hassle with this? So then I would not post it.
Right. And so somebody else has a follow-up question to that. It's, how do you use social media as a journalist?
Oh, as a journalist? Oh. Well, I mean, it's easy. It's like it's like an encyclopedia right here. Whatever subject matter you have. You know, a journalist, you have to be a generalist, right? Because you have to know a little bit about everything. And so obviously you can search stuff up, you know, find, if you're doing a certain story about a certain person, you can find their account on Twitter. And that'll help you contact that person on Twitter, you know, because you don't have their phone number. You can do a DM and say, hey, would you like to be interviewed by Zoom today? Please contact me. So it's a great tool that way. Obviously, Google is a great tool, so that way you can find out about information you have a little knowledge on. But social media has helped me get in touch with a lot of people who I would not have been able to get in touch with 20 years ago.
Right. And just some advice for some of you up and coming reporters too. LinkedIn has a LinkedIn for Journalists site. And they do this webinar that after you complete it, it gives you access to LinkedIn Premium, which means you can search people incognito, and you can also direct message them as well. It's a great tool. Okay, so Zoom has been amazing to do interviews everywhere and anywhere. Do you think the industry will change drastically after the pandemic? So because Zoom and other tools can help you work from home.
I think so. I think so. I mean, I think it's still going to be good to interview people in person when that gets back to being a thing. But obviously, if I want to interview a specialist on some subject and he's at UCLA, you know, you can do a Zoom call with him and it won't be deemed as unacceptable anymore, you know, because it's not the right quality and not enough pixels and blah blah blah. So I think it's good, but I think we're all anxious to interview people in person again.
So do you think this will forever change the way stories are covered? So for example, will news stations still send somebody, to travel to cover stories?
Yeah, it's still being done right now. It's
Yeah.
still being done right now. But I think it's going to give us a little bit more flexibility. I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. But man, I want to go back to the old way. I want to go back to Rome.
I think we all do.
I want 3 weeks in Rome with 2 hours sleep every night. That's what I want.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, final questions. What advice do you have for a graduating student getting their first job in the COVID-19 era?
It happens. I mean, I know somebody who's an intern here. One of our sports interns just got a job in Beaumont, I believe, just like a few weeks ago. So it happens. My advice to them is the same as it's always been. I mean, you have to be safe out there and make sure you're not putting yourself at undue risk. But save your money, because your first job, you're not going to get paid a lot.
Right.
But spend things on things that will help your career. Comfortable shoes.
And an open mind.
Decent
right?
looking ties.
Yeah.
Ties. Remember, it's mainly from the waist up. So
yeah.
If that helps. But no, you have to invest in your looks. I hate to say, I mean, I'm talking about TV journalists. You have to invest in your looks.
I would say across the board. I think looking professional. Yeah.
I mean, how many facelifts have I had? No, I haven't had one. I haven't had any. But maybe I need one, man.
Right.
Maybe I need one.
And I would also say, keeping an open mind as far as what market you would go to, right? Because I mean.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was lucky because I grew up in Corpus. And, when I got my first job, I think I might have been living with my parents, because I was like the intern shooting the car wrecks and the fires. But
yeah.
It's more difficult, I mean, if you're growing up in Houston, because you put your first job probably will not be here.
Right.
Beaumont, or maybe Bryan College Station, or Corpus, or, Abilene, or something like that. But, hey, man, it's all character building. And those are great towns,
Mm-hmm.
But be careful with your money.
Right. Okay, and final question. Would you say your career hasn't taken much time away from your family, or is your time mostly taken up by work?
Well, when I did the morning show, my kids that are grown now were like in high school and junior high, and that was perfect because I probably got too much family time, because I'd come home, I'd take a nap, I'd get up at 4, and they're coming home from school. I'd go to bed like at 9:30 or 10, and I'd get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to come do the morning show. So no, I got a lot of family time. I mean, unless you're working for the network and they're sending you all over the country, you're gonna have plenty of family time, if that's what you want.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with that. You also make it work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you also need to get a spouse that's very sympathetic with your schedule, because you might have to work Christmas. I might have to work Christmas. I might have to work Thanksgiving. Right. My wife, she's not thrilled about that, but you have to have somebody who understands that, hey, I don't have banker hours,
Right. I honestly credit my husband to a lot of my success, because if it weren't for him and taking care of, other things that I wouldn't be able to take care of, this would have never worked.
It does pay to have a partner or spouse that understands the needs of your business, and how you might have to work holidays, and might have to work nights or weekends or mornings, and get up at 2 a.m. How good is that for a relationship?
Right.
The alarm going off at 2 a.m. It'll be in the book.
Okay. Well, Ron, thank you so much again for your time. We really, really appreciate it.
I don't know did I give anybody advice? I feel like I didn't give anybody any advice.
You gave us a lot of advice. You did.
I mean, it's just the same old stuff. You got to work hard. Forget the ego, because your ego is gonna be bruised, baby. Your ego will be bruised and abused, but it's just a business.
Yep.
And you're gonna have lows, but you're gonna have highs too, man. You're gonna have lows and you have highs.
Yeah. Well,
use it as inspiration. Use it as inspiration.
Yes.
it's always, I always liken it to sports. You know, TV is like sports. I hate to make it so TV oriented, but you know, since I do TV, I've never worked in a newspaper, but TV journalism, your producer, reporter, anchor, it's like sports, man. You know, it's what have you done for me lately? Have you scored a touchdown lately? You know, and then, you know, sometimes the coaches, they move around just like the NFL. The bosses move around just like the NFL coaches. You know, but you know, hey, be like Carlos Correa, okay? Because look at him.
That's right.
At him. I mean, the haters, right? Look how he responds to haters. I'm not saying that you can have a lot of haters in your career, but you take whatever hate you get your way or criticism of that person who says, you're not a really good reporter. You know, you prove them wrong. I've had people say that to me.
Right.
That, hey, you're not a good reporter. You're not a good anchor. And it made me work harder. And I'm not saying I am a good reporter or a good anchor. And that's not for me to say. I see all my weaknesses. I try to overcome them with other things.
Yeah.
Everybody brings something to the table. But you take that and you be a Correa. You hit a home run.
It's true. As a reporter, it's inevitable you will get hate mail at one point in your career. You're never going to be perfect for anyone.
Yeah.
So thank you again, Ron, and thank you all for joining us. Don't forget to join us Saturday, November 7th at 11:30 via Zoom to get some more advice on your career or how to climb the ladder in journalism. Ron, thank you so much. Take care. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
All right. Thank you all so much. I hope I helped, okay?
You did, absolutely.
All right, y'all be good.
Bye.
Gracias. Saludos.
Are there any questions for membership? You can go to nhj.org and sign up.
And Ruthie,
see you later.
Bye.
Oh.
Ruthie, if you want, please put your email too in the chat. So if anybody wants to send out.
Absolutely. Let me do that right quick. Ay, Madre de Dios. Okay, here we go. There's my email.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Definitely reach out to Ruthie. You can also reach me at giselle.greenwood@gmail.com if you have any other questions. But have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Make sure to follow us on social media.
Yes, follow us on social media. NAHJ Houston on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Have a great weekend, y'all.